Welcome to Mindful with Minaa, where we explore how mindfulness can enhance your relationships and well-being. I'm your host, Minaa B, a licensed social worker, mental health educator, and author. Through insightful discussions, I will guide you towards self-awareness and self-efficacy, empowering you to effectively manage your relationships, reduce burnout, and be more present with yourself. So let's jump into today's episode. What's up, Mindful community? Welcome back to another episode of Mindful with Minaa. And today we're diving into a topic that is often overlooked but has a deep impact on our emotional and physical well-being. And that topic is skin hunger, also known as touch deprivation, and how it's becoming more prevalent in the digital age. Now, I will say I first started to understand touch deprivation during the pandemic, specifically around 2021, because we were socially distanced, we were experiencing isolation, people were taught that other people are scary, stay away from people. We literally were being told that people were dangerous and not recognizing the emotional and physical consequences of constant disconnection in a world where people are meant to be connected to each other. So I became very intrigued by this topic and started to do a ton of research around this concept of touch deprivation to figure out what are the things that we can be doing to feel more connected to others in a world where we are feeling so disconnected from the people that we're trying to be in community with. And in a world where so much of our interaction happens online, we can easily underestimate how important physical touch is to our well-being. And the truth is, touch is essential to our mental and physical health. And when we don't get enough, it can lead to serious emotional consequences. So I am going to be unpacking skin hunger, also known as touch deprivation. So you might hear me using those two terms interchangeably through this episode, but I'm also going to share some strategies that you can use to cope if you are experiencing this on a deeper level. So first, let me define what skin hunger is. Skin hunger refers to the physical and emotional longing for human touch. It's not just about wanting a hug or a handshake. It's about needing that physical contact to feel connected, secure, and grounded. The reality is, for centuries, human beings have relied on touch as a form of communication, comfort, and bonding. It literally starts from birth with skin-to-skin contact between parents and their babies. This is a core thing in early attachment that we talk about. The importance of skin to skin, the importance of physical contact with the child so that both the parent and the child can be releasing oxytocin. And this continues on throughout life as a way to express care, love, and support. Think about infants when they are in need of something. They will cry, they will whine, and most of the time they want to be held, they want to be fed. Whether you bottle feed them or breastfeed them, they're still releasing oxytocin. They want to be hugged. They literally want to be touched. And that does not stop as the child gets older. We are always going to be in need of physical contact. What I'm seeing, however, through research is that as our world becomes increasingly digital, we're interacting more through screens and less in person. Also, think about how much of your communication happens through texting, video calls, or even just social media. I'm even going to go great lengths and say how much of your communication is just simply texting, because I know a lot of people who don't even want to do video calls anymore, and some people don't even want to do phone calls anymore. And there are also other people who are like, yeah, I'll, text you back in a week or two. So we're literally becoming less engaged as a society. And we're not thinking about how this has detrimental consequences to building romantic relationships as well as building friendships. And in a world right now where friendships are hurting and people are also complaining about the dating pool and the options that are available to them, we also need to be very mindful of the habits that we have around communicating. Because if you're so burnt out that you're like, I'm not going to pick up the phone to call someone, I have no desire to video call somebody, and I'm going to take maybe a month or 2 weeks to respond to you through a text message, then if there is literally no communication, how are we going to develop strong, healthy relationships? So this is something that we have to be really, really mindful of and use discernment, because if we're craving connection and we're experiencing skin hunger, we're also experiencing the hunger for longing, love, and support. We also have to be very mindful of what we're giving. Because if we want to receive care and nurture, we also have to ask ourselves, are we giving care and nurture? And so while technology has its benefits, it's also contributing to a lack of physical and emotional connection. And that's where the concept of skin hunger comes in. People are experiencing touch deprivation without even realizing it. Touch deprivation happens when we don't get enough physical contact in our daily lives, and it can lead to feelings of loneliness, depression, and even a decline in physical health. Research shows that humans need touch to thrive, and without it, our mental and emotional health can suffer significantly. So I want to dive into some of the things that I discovered regarding the impact of touch deprivation and the effects of it when we're not experiencing touch. Studies have shown that touch has a profound impact on brain chemistry. When we experience physical touch, our brains release oxytocin, often referred to as the love hormone. And this hormone helps to reduce stress and build feelings of trust and emotional connection. At the same time, touch can lower levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And when the stress hormone is elevated for long periods of time, it can have damaging effects on our body, including weakening the immune system and increasing the risk of mental health conditions like anxiety and depression. What we also have to understand is that when cortisol rises, it can put the nervous system in a state of hypoarousal or hyperarousal. Hyperarousal is when the body goes into fight or flight mode, and so it is overstimulated. It might experience high levels of anxiety, and it might experience panic attacks due to the high levels of stress the body is experiencing. But when we experience hypoarousal, that is when the body goes into freeze mode, where the body shuts down. So the body starts to experience high levels of fatigue, the body starts to disassociate, you might start experiencing chronic burnout. And that is because the body is no longer operating within its window of tolerance. We don't realize that loneliness can impact the nervous system because biologically we are wired for connection. And when we are experiencing a lack of physical connection as well as a lack of emotional connection, that can take the body out of its window of tolerance. And the reason why we need to be in our window of tolerance is because that is considered our optimal level of functioning. So that is when we are able to problem solve, think clearly, regulate our emotions, and manage stress in an optimal way. When we are not in our window of tolerance, that is when we experience what we call nervous system dysregulation, and that is how the body ends up in a state of hyperarousal or hypoarousal. According to a study published in Psychiatry Research, physical touch is directly linked to reductions in stress levels, and people who don't experience enough touch are more likely to suffer from chronic loneliness and mental health issues. In 2023, U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy declared that we are living in a loneliness epidemic. And research from that showed that loneliness has a mortality rate of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. When I came across that data, I was shocked. Literally, a mortality rate equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That should show you how important connection is for our development as human beings. Touch deprivation doesn't just affect our emotional health, it can also impact our physical health. And research from the American Psychological Association shows that people who experience chronic touch deprivation may have higher blood pressure, heart issues, and weaker immune systems due to prolonged exposure to stress. And studies also show that people can experience these same outcomes from experiencing loneliness. And so, after unpacking all of this data, I think it's really important to figure out how we manage skin hunger in a digital age. Because the reality is, face to face interactions are being replaced with virtual ones. While it's great that we can stay connected with friends and family through video chats and social media, these digital interactions don't provide the same benefits as physical touch or even physical connection. Before the pandemic, we were already seeing an increase in touch deprivation, especially among younger generations, specifically Gen Z, who rely heavily on technology for communication. This can also happen to elderly parents, especially empty nesters, who their children are out the home, they're by themselves, and so they're using technology also to communicate with others. The pandemic, of course, only amplified this, with social distancing and lockdowns forcing us to keep physical distance from loved ones and reduce casual touch like hugs and handshakes. And a survey conducted by the Touch Research Institute found that during the pandemic, 60% of people reported feeling touch deprived. And while some of us have slowly started to return to normal social interactions, many people are still struggling with the after effects of prolonged isolation. They're struggling mentally, emotionally, but also physically. We're more connected than ever digitally, but more isolated physically. And that's a big part of why skin hunger is becoming such an important issue to address. I want you to think about times where you say, I haven't seen this family member or friend in a really long time, but I feel so connected to them because I'm watching their Instagram stories or I see the things that they post on Facebook. We are literally replacing physical interactions with social interactions. And we're teaching our brains that just because I can keep up with you because of what I see you posting online, I don't need to have that skin to skin contact. I don't need to have that in person contact because all I have to do is wait for you to post on your stories. And that is also creating these parasocial relationships where we are creating this belief that just because I see you constantly online and you're sharing details about your life online, that I know you want to have an intimate relationship with you, but I don't. That does not replace physical connection. I came across a survey conducted by BBC, and it was called the Touch Test, and it was actually the world's largest study of touch. And the results were really fascinating. So I want to share with you a summary of the results that they found. In this test, 72% of people reported a positive attitude towards touch. 43% of typical adults feel that society does not enable us to touch enough. The leading reason people gave for why we did not touch enough was consent. 88% of people liked public displays of affection by their partners. People who like touch tend to score higher on extroversion, openness to new experiences, and agreeableness, especially if it's touch involving non-family members. People who don't like touch were more likely to be people who find it difficult to form trusting relationships. The three most common words used to describe touch were comforting, warm, and love. 79% of people liked being touched by a friend, and 63% disliked being touched by a stranger. 61% of people said a hug from a partner before sleep had a positive effect on their sleep, whilst only 4% said it had a negative effect. This data is so fascinating to me in so many ways. I personally love touch, and I love that they said that the three common words used to describe touch were comforting, warmth, and love, because that is what comes up for me when I am being touched. But I also love that people shared that they find it difficult to be touched by people that they do not have trusting relationships with. And I think that is a whole different conversation around attachment and safety and physical safety and psychological safety in relationships that needs to be unpacked in a completely different episode. But I just wanted to share this data so that we can just have an understanding of how touch impacts people. And I also want you to take a moment to pause and ask yourself, how does touch impact you? And how does a lack of touch impact you? So now that I shared with you tons of data and information related to touch deprivation, also known as skin hunger, I want to jump into some strategies that you can use to cope with touch deprivation. The first one is physical affection with loved ones. One of the simplest solutions is to increase the amount of physical contact with the people that are already in your life. Whether it's hugging your partner more, holding hands more, or even just a friendly pat on the back, these small gestures can actually go a long way in fulfilling the need for touch. I also think it's important to communicate to your partner what your desire for touch is, because there are also some people, primarily women who are in primary roles of caretaking for children, experience something called being touched out, where they are experiencing too much touch and therefore they don't want to be touched. And when you have small children, most of the time, especially if you're breastfeeding, if you have a very, very young child, you are going to be doing a lot of skin to skin. And so communication is very important because a lack of touch, as I shared, can be detrimental, not just to our well being, but to our relationships. So you need to be communicating to your partner what it looks like for you to be touched out, but also what it looks like for you to be touch deprived, and figuring out ways that you all can create these small gestures of warmth, care, comfort, and love. Another thing is that if you have pets, spending time cuddling or playing with them can also meet your skin hunger needs. Did you know that when you bond with an animal, you also release oxytocin the same way a parent would release oxytocin when they bond with their child? This is why there are so many people who have a strong connection to their pets, because it's literally releasing the same love hormone. So don't neglect the importance of spending time with your animal. Another thing that we can utilize is mindful self touch. Now, here's the thing, nothing can fully replace human connection, but self touch can actually help regulate your emotions and calm your nervous system to bring you back to its window of tolerance, especially if you are in a state of hyperarousal, as I described earlier, being in that fight or flight mode, or hypoarousal, which is when your body is in freeze mode. So, some things that you can do is practices like self massages, where you're rubbing your arms, rubbing your shoulders, rubbing different parts of your body. You can also use a weighted blanket for comfort, because that also helps to calm your nervous system and it feels like a warm hug. These actions can trigger similar calming responses in your body to those that come from receiving touch from another person. So just be mindful of different ways that you can engage in self touch. Now, therapeutic touch is another thing that you can do. If you're not able to get regular physical contact from loved ones, therapeutic touch can be an alternative. This can include massage therapy, acupuncture, or even practices like Reiki, which focuses on energy healing through touch. So just make sure you are seeking these services from a professional in a safe and controlled environment where there is consent and where they know, as a provider, how to touch certain areas of your body to release the stress that is stored in the body. Because again, remember, the longer you're going without physical contact, the more the cortisol levels of stress are rising in your body. And sometimes that stress gets stored in certain parts of your body, like your shoulders, your lower back, and that can be a sign that you need to move that stress in different ways. Another thing that we can do is join social or activity-based groups. I am a big fan of working out in classes versus going to the gym by myself. Now, are you getting touched in that environment? Not necessarily, but it is an environment that allows for more social engagement. And so when you join a dance class or a yoga group, any form of physical fitness can help with your emotional well being, but also increase your chances of engaging in self touch from the things that you might have to do in those classes. And so those are some strategies that you can be utilizing to try to fight skin hunger. But at the core of everything that I talked about, the goal here is to find ways to increase physical connection and physical contact. And one of the ways that we can do that is to first build emotional intimacy with people and making sure that we're building community and connections that can lead to more moments of touch. Because we're not going to be out here hugging strangers, right? That is not the goal of this. But if you want to be in relationships with people where you are getting more of that physical touch and care, you're also going to have to be in community with people where there is deep intimacy. And overall, there is trust and safety that will then lead to an increase in physical contact and connection. So, my hope as you listen to this episode is that you walk away recognizing that touch is one of our most basic needs. And in a world where we're increasingly connected through screens but disconnected physically, it's essential to find ways to address touch deprivation because skin hunger is real, y'all. So, whether you're in a relationship, single, or living alone, I encourage you to take the steps you need to ensure you're getting the physical contact necessary for improving your mental health. So if this episode resonated with you, or if you learned something new, please share it in the comments if you're listening on Spotify. Please also share this episode with a friend. Make sure to leave a review and subscribe so that you do not miss another episode. Remember, human connection is key to our well-being, so stay connected and take care of yourself. Until next time. That's all for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed what you just listened to, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on your preferred platform. Also, don't forget to share it with a friend and on social media. To stay connected with me and my work, follow me on social media and subscribe to the Mindful with Minaa newsletter, which can be found on my website, www.minab.com. You can also continue learning from me by ordering my book, Owning Our Struggles, which is available at all major book retailers. Stay tuned for a new episode next week, and most importantly, remember to be present and stay mindful. Take care, and goodbye for now.